This is Paul Minicucci, Executive Director of NCTV and the Nevada County Digital Media Center. And we're pleased to be working with George Rebane and the Tech Forum to host Rick Hutley, who is the very provocative Vice President for Global Innovations and Practice. Rick, thank you for coming.
It's a real pleasure. What a beautiful city.
Yes, we think so. It's one of the sales points that our tech companies, when they bring engineers from around the world up here, they're sold immediately.
well, I'm sold.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you back, and thank you so much for taking time out of your business to come help us out on this. It's a very worthy project, as I'm sure you know. Rick, tell me what it is that Global Innovations Practice for Cisco Internet Business Solutions Group is. What do you do?
That's a great question, and not that easy to answer in some senses. The best way to think of our group, the Internet Business Solutions Group, is we are charged with working with the board level, the business leaders of our largest customers and entities around the world. And that literally includes everyone from the White House to the board of Walmart to the National Health Service in the UK, etc. And what we offer, what we're bringing to them, is how can technology help you achieve your business goals or overcome your business challenges? And so that would include things like, we need to cut $1 billion out of our cost structure, or we're thinking of entering the China market. What are the revenue potential opportunities? Or change the culture of our company and become more innovative. How can technology help us do that?
Right. And in some cases, that would require a company to change a lot of their culture, would it not?
It absolutely would. And particularly starting at the top of the company.
Right. I was going to say, is the board, I guess I would wonder if the boards are, in one sense, are the best place to start because it's the policy-making group, but on the other hand, my inclination is to think that the board members are not keeping up with the innovations that your engineers and other engineers are actually dealing with in the laboratory.
It depends on the company, to be honest, Paul. In some cases, the board itself, the very top of the company, is receptive to change and receptive to ideas, and that's fantastic because you can have real impact if you can get to that level. In other cases, because of the structure of the company, they are mini companies in their own right, and perhaps the head of one particular business unit could be a massive business unit. And again, if that group is receptive. But wherever you engage, it's the top of any organization that fundamentally sets the culture.
Right.
And they are the ones that have to buy in. One of the things we do as a group, Cisco does not charge for our service. We're not a consulting or traditional consulting group. We are a team of a mixture, really, ex-partners from major consulting companies like McKinsey or Bain, as well as industry leaders who've been there, done it, and still got the scars. I myself am a former CIO from British Telecom, 28 years in the industry, etc. So it's that combination of strategic thinkers and practitioners that we bring together at no charge. And I look across the proverbial table at my customer and say, it's you and me. There is no army of people that's going to come in and do this. It's you and me that are going to make this happen. So are you in? Because you're going to invest time. This is not just sponsorship. You're going to invest time and money and effort. And so they do. If we engage, then they are actually investing their own time and money.
Right.
And then it's not about producing a ring binder. It's about doing something real and meaningful.
Right, and I love the little story about the grocery retail chain that You know, you're not in the business of helping people shop. You're in the business of helping them eat or having food.
That's right.
Which, by the way, has played real well up in this part of the country. One of the companies out of Sacramento, Bel Air Supermarkets, it's all about that. It's all about food and family and you know, holidays and having the friends in and nutritious and having a lifestyle. And it's not at all about, you know, the shopping experience. So
Right.
I think that's tell me how did technology perhaps play a role in you making that kind of leap?
Well, one of the things, there's several major trends going on in the world, quite frankly. Many of them we know about. You know, globalization, mobility, there's a huge green movement that's becoming very important. But one of the key ones that I talk to many companies about is changing the customer experience. The world is growing again, and you know, we're keeping our fingers crossed, but we hopefully are in a growth mode, and many companies are saying, how do I capture new customers? How do I retain the ones I have? They're a new breed of customer.
Yes.
The ones with the disposable income today, the middle group, so to speak, are the ones that grew up with the internet. They're the ones that we used to say a few years ago, you know, look to the youngsters when they come up, when they get here. Well, they're here.
Right.
And they're the ones with the money. And they think and they work differently. They
do.
They are used to using technology. They are going to be mobile. And it's that level of thinking that we then take to our customers and say, your model today, like everybody else's model, quite frankly, is the customer comes to you. Well, that's not going to be the way of the future. The next customer experience is you go to the customer.
Right.
So hence my conversation with that particular board, where I was challenging them, saying, your job is not to make it easier for me to get into your store. Your job is to make it easier for me to eat and decide what to eat and to help me get that food. I delivered the same message, by the way, to the banking industry.
Right.
I've met with many of the major banks around the world, and my challenge to their boards is, do we need money anymore? It's an artificial instrument after all.
Right.
We only invented it because folks in towns like this were digging up gold, and it was rather heavy to walk around with.
And we're running out of goats and sheep to trade.
Right. So we invented paper money.
Yeah.
But have we now surpassed that?
Yeah.
And the challenge I throw out to the banks is, your job is not to help me store my money safely. Your job is to help me spend it wisely. Mm-hmm. You have more buying power than I do. You have a greater outlook on the world. You know what's happening in various countries. So don't just help me hoard my money. Help me spend it sensibly. Give me advice and give me guidance and so on. And if you turn the bank around into that mode,
Right.
now you're very interesting to me. And from a business perspective, a very interesting thing happens. In order for you, if we stick with the banking analogy, to provide me with that guidance, I have to surrender information. I have to tell you what I'm interested in. You want me to help you spend your money, Rick? Tell me what you'd like to spend it on. What are your hobbies? What homes do you have? Whatever. That information is the new gold.
Yes.
Information is the new gold.
Right.
And so capturing that is very, very valuable and very sticky. Once I trust that bank and I've given them all my information, the chances of me moving are very unlikely.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I often say in marketing, nothing is going to be the same after the Starbucks experience, because people are not paying $3 for coffee. They're paying, $4, $5 a cup for the experience of the coffee experience,
Exactly right.
And so, I think that goes beyond the borders of Starbucks, and every company needs to be thinking that way. And indeed, we are at our television station trying to change our stripes from basically a broadcast model to an internet-based model, because people under 40 don't wait until Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. to see a half-hour show.
Right.
They want it now, they want video on demand, they want to be linked, it's a knowledge-based economy. So we look ourselves as a facilitator for gaining knowledge and helping people plug in to where they need to plug in this fast-paced world, because people don't know how to do that by themselves and in of themselves. And in fact, people our age are rather afraid of technology. So you know, the world is changing, and I think companies have to understand that they not only have to tweak it, they have to really rethink it.
Yes.
Because digital media is going to be delivering marketing and design and, you know, and a way of connecting to your customers that was different in not just in scope, but in nature.
Absolutely. The way in which the up-and-coming generation, because sort of the generations always flowing through, they think and operate very differently to us. I was laughing the other day, I was talking to a group, I'll probably mention it this morning when I present. I was talking to my daughter, she's sitting on the couch, and she's clicking away on her phone, and then she'll be back to her laptop, and then she'll be clicking away on her phone again. And eventually I said, oh, for goodness sake, why don't you just call them? You know, it's a phone, that's what it's for. Of course she looked at me, she's 18, she just looked at me and goes, oh, Dad.
It's so uncool.
So we don't do that. But I probed a little bit further, it was interesting to me. And what I found out was two things. One, she said, if I text, it gives me time to think. If I'm on the phone, I have to react. You ask me a question, I have to give an answer. But with texting, I have time to think about what I want to say. And she said, the second point was, she said, besides which, I can't phone them. There's not one of them. I was talking to three or four of them.
Exactly.
And so they are a multi-tasking group of people. Now, we weren't. When I grew up, first of all, we had pen and paper. Please don't laugh. But I grew up in the pen and paper era.
Right.
I graduated to email. Wow.
Yes.
You know, and then the telephone. All one-on-one technologies for the most part.
Correct. Yeah.
The younger generation don't think that way.
Exactly.
And we have to cater to them.
Yes, absolutely. And it is a group thing. I did the very same experiment with my daughter, and that's exactly what she said. You know, that I'm having a group. Interestingly, we make a difference between information age and knowledge age. We think that we pass through simple information age. You want information, go to Google. They know everything. You know,
right.
They're better than any teacher could ever be. You know. Put in Shakespeare, you get 28 million hits. So what you need to do is to understand information in context.
Yes.
That's really knowledge. And kids who have 3 or 4 people, rather than 1 or 2 interacting, find that there's kind of a quantum leap in building knowledge because you have so many more viewpoints and more data and so forth. And I think they're hip to that.
They are, and it throws up real challenges for corporations today, for which they're just beginning to realize. Transparency is like nothing we've ever seen before. You can no longer hide behind corporate marketing material or boardroom decisions. The fact is, people can now see pretty much anything that your company is doing, where it gets its raw materials, what waste or effluent it produces, what corporate decisions you make, and are you a good social citizen or a planetary citizen. Everything is open and on the table. And I frankly think that's a good thing.
Yes.
I mean, that is forcing us to be more efficient and more responsible companies. But it also has an impact on how the workforce of the future are going to select their employers. Coca-Cola recently did an interview of potential candidates, university candidates that they were attracting to find out what would make them come work for Coca-Cola. 12% of them said, if you don't give me access to and allow me to use the tools that I want to use, where I want to use, and when I want to use. In other words, if you don't give me the ability to work from home, or Starbucks, or use my social media tools, if you're going to lock me in your confines of the 9-to-5 office, I will not work for you. And this is in a huge recession, when even graduate students with degrees are finding it difficult to get a job. But that's the mentality of that age. I am not going to come into an office 9 to 5 and do that. There are some where that's the job. But for the knowledge workers, they're saying, no, I can be more productive and more effective and make more profit for you if you allow me to work my way with my tools.
Yeah. In fact, I work quite a bit with folks in Hollywood, and folks at DreamWorks Academy teach their kids that because they have what's called worldwide groups. And so they have 8-hour shifts, And sometimes you have to bleed into the next, so they have somebody in Prague and somebody in Hong Kong and somebody in Hollywood. And they just hand the projects off as they go, but sometimes you have to go 18 hours because you have to stick with the original thread. And so they're looking for candidates who are willing to do that. In fact, as you point out, most of the candidates are willing to do that, and only that, because they don't want to be, it's their career at stake, and they don't want to be shackled by some artificial boundaries. This presents a couple of interesting questions, so I want to get into a little bit about education, because we know Cisco really values supporting education here in America, and worldwide indeed. The old style of, I do my work by myself, get a grade, I don't interact. I often say in speeches that if you did what business requires you to do in school, you get kicked out for cheating. What we call collaboration over here is cheating over here. What we call innovation and creativity over here is out of the box thinking, which we can't measure over here. How can Cisco help bring the message that you are talking about to our school system? Because we, a company I work with, I'm chairman of the board of the Digital Arts Studio Partnership here in California, works as an intermediary between business, industry, schools, government, and nonprofits to try to create a seamless community called the studio. In every community, which, workforce development, it's about education, it's about civic engagement, it's about all those things with digital media. But we find the school systems are so resistant and 20th century bound, even 19th century bound. How can Cisco help break through that?
Well, Cisco's doing a lot of work in the education space, as you say. It's one of our major identified markets that we're specifically going after, developing product for, etc. We also have, like any large corporation, a philanthropic arm of Cisco that works with many of the universities and schools to help them move things forward. John Chambers, for example, has his own building at the University of the Pacific in order to try and not only teach technology, but teach these cultural messages. We make an enormous number of videos and content available, for example, on our websites. And some of those websites are specific to the educational industry. And then we have folks like myself and many of our executives who will visit schools, who try and help bring that education, if you will, and share whatever content we have. One of the great things about Cisco is pretty much, notwithstanding appropriate security, shall we say, pretty much if Cisco's got it, we'll give it away. If we've got a PowerPoint deck that explains something, you're very welcome to it. If we have videos that we think will help people, we will make those available. So there's a lot we can do, and are doing. The technology itself, of course, is what helps. Fundamentally, education is about access to information, first and foremost. The internet, of course, is the greatest tool in the world. It's the most amazing thing that human beings have ever invented, because it allows us to gain access to any information, anywhere in the world.
At any time. It's open
at
24
any
hours.
time.
Yeah.
And it's not only educating in the, shall we say, the direct sense, like I can go somewhere and learn about quantum physics. But it's education in terms of gluing the world together culturally. I found this colleague over in China, or I found someone else over here. And not just within our companies. We certainly have the technology that allows you to do that and bring communities together in companies, a product we call Quad. But again, going back to my daughter, I've found that the younger generation are far more adept at crossing cultural boundaries than certainly my generation is. And they think nothing of it. Social networking, when I look to my daughter and talk to her, she's got people from all over the world, all different cultures, colours, creeds.
It's the most amazing thing.
It is.
The Arab Spring touched everybody. I mean, we had kids at U was try to connect with their students, a couple students who actually were from Egypt, visited at U.S. abroad, and then they brought back, and we facilitated some conversations and some Skype and video conversations between these kids. It's just amazing that they don't even think that there's this barrier. They think of it not as a barrier at all.
Right, they look at us and say, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, that Cisco does, and many large companies, and it's important, is we play a very active role in discussions at the government level, at the
Yes.
federal level, etc., to keep the internet open, to keep it free, so to speak, free to share information, etc. Because we truly believe that that's fundamentally important to society and to the world.
Yeah, that's a big issue right now. I was coming into work today, I was listening to some conversations Google is having in some actual lawsuits brimming about how information is kept, used, and what does the public actually know about that. So that's an interesting. The other thing I was going to ask you about: how does Cisco look at intellectual property rights these days, where you have so many collaborations going on from different parts of different companies, parts of your own company? How do you handle the whole question of intellectual property rights?
Well, IP is always an interesting challenge, and is very much dependent, obviously, on which particular relationship one is looking at, which company, etc. Our overall approach to IP is, and patents, for example. Obviously, we patent all of our ideas and our technologies. That's understandable. But we take a defensive approach on IP and patents. We will defend our patents if need be, but that is quite rare. The predominant use of patents for Cisco is so that if someone else were to try and claim and sue Cisco, because everybody wants to sue the big guy.
Exactly, yeah.
So we have patents so that if people want to try and sue Cisco, we can say, no, we actually have the patent on that, and we can prove it. As I say, we obviously, like any major corporation, we will defend our patents if we need to. And we have done so on very few occasions, actually. Predominantly, we prefer that the world actually uses the technology. We want to make this information available because all boats float.
Exactly.
We grow the market and we will benefit, and others benefit too. We have what I believe to be a very healthy outlook on competition. We think it's a good thing. If there was no competition, there is no impetus to improve. And so we actually welcome competition. Now, we'll fight them,
right,
fair and square. We'll do it honestly and openly and in all good spirit. We love our competitors, but we'll beat them to the sale if we can.
Right. We have time for about two more little issues. One is, how does Cisco view relationship with China? Is the United States doing enough to protect our companies vis-a-vis intellectual property rights? Is China going to continue to be the 800-pound gorilla for the foreseeable future?
Well, I think China, again, is a very interesting challenge, both for the Chinese as well as for the rest of the world. Again, I think Cisco's view is we obviously work with the US government in whatever is an appropriate way to ensure that trade between our nations, whether it's China or any other nation, but the trade can be fairly conducted. But China's a very important market. It's a very important market to Cisco, and it's a very important market to the US, and it's a very important market to the world. So we absolutely want to work with China, and we are doing so. We've invested heavily in China, in India, in the emerging countries. So China is certainly not unique in our minds. It's another very large market that has a lot of potential, and a lot of really smart people. Much of our equipment is manufactured in China, so we do a great deal with China. Is it going to be the, I forget the phrase you used, the 800-pound gorilla?
That's probably a small gorilla. Maybe that's
it's more the 8 billion pound gorilla. I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, India and China are simply huge markets, I mean, astronomically huge markets, that they are going to be a major force for the foreseeable future. Are they therefore inviolate, and they can just roam the world and we're in economic trouble, as is Europe, don't worry about China, they've got plenty of money? The answer to that is no.
Right.
China is struggling with the economic downturn every bit as much as we are. And that, in many ways, comes back to the information age and the knowledge age that we've been talking about. The world is inextricably linked, whether it's through the financial institutions, the informational institutions, the news and media information institutions like yourselves. We are linked. What happens in one part of the globe impacts the other part of the globe, and it doesn't matter how big you are. The almighty US, I'm afraid, is as linked to Europe and what happens in Greece as is China, India, or anyone else. So we have to learn to work cooperatively together, and we, as a major company in the communications industry, absolutely are and will continue to play our part to make that happen.
After all, you are the human network.
We are indeed the human network, and we kind of like human beings. We want them to work nicely together.
So lastly, and again, thank you so much for coming here and having a presence in this event today with the Tech Forum. Why did you come to this event? What did you think? How could, I mean, obviously we're trying to increase pathways for kids to be getting into engineering and to fund that wherever necessary and provide some kind of incentives. I mean, George Remain and I would talk ad infinitum about what's happening with science in our country, but from your perspective, what value added is it for us and for you?
Well, that's a great question. If you think of my job, I spend 99% of my time roaming the world talking to the largest companies you could possibly imagine. Very, very clever and seasoned executives. The problems, whether you're large or small, are very, very similar. And it's great, by the way. It's a real privilege to work with those companies. It really is. But they're big. And sometimes their challenges are really, really big. And therefore their ability to move fast, to be agile, or to think out of the box is limited simply because it's not they can't think, they don't have the smarts to be clever or innovative. They can. But moving that 800-pound juggernaut is not as easy as it sounds. So we work with them through that, and it can take months and sometimes years to put into place some of these ideas. And you go to the other end of the spectrum, and you find communities that get it. And that's what I detected here, that this is a community that gets it. They've got smart people, they want to do something, and you have the will, therefore, and the ability to be far more agile and come together. That intrigued me. The thing I also really, really liked is the concept of bringing in the young people and engaging them. The US has a real problem. There are more PhDs produced every year in India than the US has PhDs in total. We are losing the knowledge race.
Right.
And I want to do everything I can, along with all of you good folks, to turn that around. We have to re-inspire our young people to think big. You're in a beautiful small community here, nestled in the foothills of the mountains, and it's just idyllic. And it would be so easy to see this as a sleepy little western town in California, and it needn't be. You have very smart people, you have very smart children, and in today's world, we are all connected. We can take part on the grandest of scales. And if I in some way can do my little part to inspire the children to say, yeah, dream big, because you can dream big and live here and impact the entire world. That's why I'm here.
Rick, thank you so much for agreeing to interview.
It's a real pleasure, Paul.